Hi, this is JJ Smith Medium, and welcome to this week's episode of the Weekly Wow of Spirit Stories. This week, I met with a woman by the name of Carrie, and what was interesting about hers that really left an impression on me with her reading is she's been a Reiki client of mine for probably a solid, I don't know, 8 or 9 months, where she comes every single month. And I wasn't sure how she felt about the reading part of it, so I have never really said much to her, with the exception of that I can feel a woman around her. And when she first started coming to me, she had really high anxiety, and it was something that she said she struggled with her entire life. And as we've worked together, I can actually feel her energy settling down and calming more. And so the last time I had done Reiki on her, she had asked, next time we meet, can we do a reading? And I said, yeah, that would be great. And all I knew from what she had told me is that the woman that I could feel around her was probably her mom. And so that was all I knew coming in to the reading. And as we sat down and I started doing it, I realized that her mom had actually crossed herself over, and when Carrie was a child, actually. And so as I got further into the reading, it started to become apparent to me that her mom, let's just call her Sylvia so we don't get confused, Carrie's mom, Sylvia, who had crossed herself over, Sylvia was with her mother. And I kept seeing a picture of them like in a classroom learning. And that made sense to me if Sylvia had crossed herself over, because that's something that I see quite often as a result of people that have taken their own lives, is that there were lessons they were supposed to learn when they were here on earth, and because the time was cut short, now they're still learning those lessons just on the other side. And so I asked Carrie if it would make sense that Sylvia was with her mom, and Carrie said, yeah, absolutely, because her mom, which Sylvia's mom, had also tried to take her own life, gosh, clear back in like the 50s, and had not been successful, and had lived as a vegetable the rest of her life, and Sylvia had been the caretaker. So as I got further into this, I thought it was really interesting because I've never seen a multi-generational situation like that, where it's basically genetic, that the women have, they're manic, right? They have mania. And back then there wasn't any kind of meds that they would give people that were struggling with that. And so as I tuned in more with the mom, I was getting information from her that I was sharing with Carrie, and all of a sudden I got the worst stomach ache. Like, it felt like somebody had just punched me in the stomach as hard as they could. And a lot of times spirit will show me what was happening to them or what they were feeling during their death, when they were transitioning from this life over into the spirit world. And so I said to Carrie, I was like, wow, was there anything with your mom's stomach? Because at this point I knew that she had crossed herself over, but I didn't know how. And she said, yeah, actually. And I also said, I feel like I can't breathe also, like my stomach hurts and I feel like I can't breathe. And she said, yeah, my mom shot herself in the stomach, and when she did that, it clipped her heart or lungs. So that would make sense that you're feeling like that. And then what's interesting is the minute I acknowledge it and tell the client about it, the feeling passes, because I always have people say, oh, I'm so sorry. Isn't it terrible? Isn't it scary? And once I started understanding what it is, no, it doesn't bother me anymore. But when I used to not say anything, it was terrible, because then I would feel horrible for like a day or two. But I've come to the realization with spirit that as soon as I acknowledge what they're trying to give me as a message, then that feeling goes away. And the other interesting thing is, once I realized that the episode of when she was like taking her life, once I told Carrie about the stomach pain, all of a sudden I felt so completely like I couldn't get my thoughts together. I couldn't put my words together. And And I haven't actually had that happen before. And so I asked Carrie about it. I said, was there something going on with her mental state? I feel like she was heavily, heavily drugged when she decided to do this, like during the process of taking her life. And she said, yeah, that's right, that she was on all kinds of, she was trying to self-medicate, but she was also on all kinds of meds that had randomly had been given to her, this is back in the 70s, that had been given to her for depression and anxiety, and the meds they were using back then were a lot different than what they use today. And so she had mixed them all, and that's why she couldn't put her words together. And the only reason Carrie knew about that, because Carrie was only maybe like 7 or 8 when it happened, is she said that was one of the things that the 911 operator had commented on, that when her mom called to get herself an ambulance, that she couldn't put her words together. So I thought that was a really interesting reading, in that on a couple different levels. Her mom was really wanting to talk to her and tell her, because both daughters suffer with anxiety. And she was saying that, you've had some difficult times in your life, but you're really pulling it through. Like, you're really on the right path. And I'm sorry I left you girls at such a young age to have to try to raise yourself, and everything that resulted from that. And so it was a really beautiful reading, in that I know it gave the client a lot of closure on topics that she spent a lot of her life trying to suppress. So it was really beautiful in that was able to happen, and there was some closure surrounding what had happened at such a young age to my client. So that is this week's episode of the Weekly Wow. If you'd like to schedule an appointment, feel free to look at my calendar over at jjsmithmedium.com, and that's where you can set one up. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next week.